Hey, good morning. I'm Anton Stetner. I'm hanging out with my friend Talia of Form and Function. She's an interior designer who helps us out, makes us look cooler than we are. And I wanted today to go through kind of like what's her design process? What does she do? Talk about our project in Bothell specifically and how she's been helping us out there. So, Talia, what what's in the name? What's form and function mean to you? How did you get started in interior design?
I think form and function, it is what it is. It's that beautiful marriage, right, between the way it looks and how it works practically for you in your life. And I think when I started my design business 8 years ago, I was really focused on like having an eye that was not just about making beautiful things, but helping people live normal lifestyles with beautiful spaces to live in, right? Like everybody's got to function, everybody has messes to hide, and kids that might be beating up the flooring and the cabinets, and so I'm really trying to come at design with an eye for durability and function, not just pretty fluff, right?
Oh, I love it. I love it. And then what would you say like what's your signature aesthetic? Like what look do you really like or that you're doing the most of right now?
I mean, every project is so different. Every client's different. Their style is, at the heart of every single design job that I take on, right? So that's kind of the number one thing. Personally, like my aesthetic is always neutral, light, airy. That's just my forever vibe that makes me feel happy to be in spaces that feel like that. But every job is so different. I might have somebody who wants a really moody, manly cigar room where everything's dark wood and dark colors. And that's really exciting too. And I think it's fun to design outside of my personal aesthetic. Those are great challenges. Those are fun times where I get to kind of pretend like I am somebody else, like I might not ever have that in my own home, but it's really fun to kind of dip in and out of other people's styles and refine them, right? So a lot of times people come to me with a lot of inspiration images. They've got all these Pinterest boards that they've been looking at, and so kind of what I do is I help to kind of clean up whatever it is, because they may have a combination of like 5 different styles that they're attracted to, and I'm there to kind of like hone it in. Let's make it cohesive. Let's figure out how to connect this to the rest of your house if we're doing a remodel. And sometimes we're trying to create a really cool mashup of maybe 2 really distinct styles. Like, how do we make these 2 things go together, right? So we want to do like a little bit of like wabi sabi with a little bit of transitional. Like, how can we make these styles come together? So we're like finding threads and elements to balance. So
Oh, that's interesting. So, and that would actually kind of make sense. So, like humans by nature, we just kind of gather a bunch of things together and we're like, we like all these things. And we basically just dump a basket in your lap and say, hey, solve my problem here.
yeah. And part of that is like just having a process of like, how can I guide that person to one decision, and what is the priority? And then kind of like, once we find a priority, then it's easy to go from there, because we have decided that whatever it is, let's just say we're redesigning a whole kitchen, great room, living room, and their favorite thing about this concept is like this fireplace as a focal point, right? Okay. So then we've decided the fireplace is the most important thing. And then everything that we do is now to support the fireplace, right? So if they come to me and they say, well, ooh, I really love this and I really love that, and they say, doesn't go with the fireplace. And we've decided the fireplace is the most important thing. So it kind of simplifies the process when we kind of start by choosing focal points, choosing priorities, and then those priorities kind of dictate everything. And those are our constraints that we have, going into the design. And constraints are absolutely the best part of design, is having things to kind of bump up against, because it directs us. We're going to go left or we're going to go right. If we've got just like wide open possibilities, that's when it becomes really challenging. So it's really nice to kind of like choose those constraints, or if they're not already in place, and then we kind of build everything around those.
Oh, I love it. I love it. And so, you're helping us with our Bothell project right now. We're remodeling that gigantic daylight Rambler. When you look at that, like, what's your creative process with that project? What's the constraints that we have? How do we kind of go from, hey, we're just talking about this, to, all right, we have something to work on here?
There's a lot of constraints on that project. It's obviously an older home, and we're trying to take it from, its existing style to another. So we've, gutted the whole thing. Part of the challenge is that we're in the project, and,
Yep.
We're designing on the fly. When I work on homeowner projects, often I'm working on planning months in advance before we're like in the demo stage. So, but those are fun projects to work on. And I like, kind of having a mix of those types of projects, right? So I'm in there working with James, your contractor, and we're like collaborating on everything. Like, hey, what's gonna give the most bang for our buck? What, how can we make a cohesive style out of this that's going to be, cost effective? Because number one, like, you're in it for profitability. So that is
that's why we're there.
Yeah, that's why we're there. Right. So like, that's the number one objective. Right. So that's our priority. Like, going back to, hey, when the last job, the fireplace was the priority. Cost is a priority. Right. But how can we, get what we want out of it and prioritize where we're going to spend the money and where we're going to save the money. So it's a fun challenge. Again, a lot of constraints with that, but it kind of pushes me this direction or that direction as we go through each decision-making process, right? And then we're thinking about real estate. We're thinking about potential buyers, potential renters, who's going to be in this space, because we're not designing it for your personal taste. We're designing it for the masses, and we want somebody to come in. We want lots of people to come in and say, ooh, I want to live here. This feels really great. And to know that that style could last you, if you're going to rent it out, it could last you for many years to come. And we don't have to, dive too deep into trends. But we want it to be updated and clean and appealing to a lot of different people.
And then, so with that one in particular, for our new listeners, it's basically a 4,000-foot daylight Rambler, two 2,000-foot boxes stacked on top of each other. But the basement, it's only got essentially light on one side. And then it was your typical, 60s home. It was very cut up and closed off with like the formal living. And when we first walked into the home and I met the homeowner, he's like, yeah, this is nice, but we never use it. And I was immediately teasing with the owner. I was like, yeah, we're probably just going to drop that wall and have the formal living just be gone and just flow into the kitchen. And once that wall was dropped, it was like, oh my goodness, this is a new house.
Yeah.
The granddaughter came by a couple weeks ago and walked in, and she's like, oh my goodness, like, this is so different.
Yeah.
And so, other than like, what is it called? Functional obsolescence, and then lack of daylight in the basement, what challenges are we specifically running into? And then how are we overcoming those with this project? Because honestly, I love what happened with the downstairs and the basement and the upstairs.
Yeah. The downstairs is a great example. We had like all that brick on the exterior. So we were debating like, how do we create a second entry, right? Because we've got dual living. We've got the upstairs is going to be a separate unit from the downstairs. And how does that person living down there operate? What is their, the function and flow of that arrangement down there? And how can we make it feel as kind of normal as possible and not make it feel like, oh, we're living in this weird little, mother-in-law that was kind of thrown together, right? So I want it to have that kind of standard flow to it. Especially, when we were talking about the front door entry, right? So the entry is on the backyard. When the UPS man comes or they invite a friend over for the first time, how does that person know how to get into the space? Like where do they go? Where's the front door? How can we draw attention to that and make it really clear? Like, here we are, this is the front door. Don't go up and around to the other side of the house. It's a separate entry. So we kind of planned that out, moved that door, worked with the existing windows in the space, again, because budget is important, right? We don't want to just like blow everything up. So kind of creatively thinking about like, how can we keep the living room kind of in the way that it is, the windows in the way that they are, create a new front door entry, and then have a nice window in the kitchen to make that feel like it was all, planned ahead of time and not just kind of thrown together after the fact.
And what I'll add in there, Talia, is when I walk downstairs and now there's that window in the basement where essentially the kitchen sink is going to go.
Right.
And the door is scooted over just a little bit and it's an actual door. You go, oh, this feels like a home. Like my brain is telling me this is a home.
Right.
And, I'm not the designer. So I look at it on paper, I go, uh-huh, okay. But then emotionally, when I walked through, I was like, oh, this looks good. And then James is like walking around. He's like, this is really good. I was like, it is.
Well, just to go back to the process, and it's simple, like for me to think about, which is like, okay, the kitchen's here, the living space is here. We're going to have a couch here that faces potentially the fireplace and the TV. We're going to have our kitchen island here. And we've got a natural pathway between the kitchen space and the living room space. And then I want that front door entry to center right down the middle of those things. So we have a nice, you could open that door. We're not infringing on furniture arrangements, and it kind of creates a natural entryway between the furniture and the island.
Makes total sense. And then, so how do you balance expectations with, builders, developers, investors, homeowners, and then also like budgets, timelines, and then all the subcontractors that go into this? This is a massive balancing act.
Mm-hmm. I mean, every project is totally different as far as how involved I am in that process. I prefer to be involved in all of it just because I care a lot about the designs that I create, and I want to make sure that they get, the best possible outcome, right? You hand off those plans and you're like, please do it the way that I said to do it.
Treat my baby right.
Please, treat my baby right. And sometimes it doesn't work out because maybe people can't afford to necessarily pay me to help with project management. But I will tell you, when they do, they get a better result because I'm part of the team, right? So basically, it can be a little bit different depending on if I'm working for an investor, if we're doing a spec house or something like that, or if I'm working on a homeowner project, if we're doing a custom home design or a remodel, that there's a whole other element with that type of client because I'm also working as a mediator. So I am that voice. I am the person that's really helping the relationship between the homeowners and the contractor, right? So I've come up with this design with the client and we've collaborated. We've made this beautiful baby and we're handing it off to the contractor. And if they keep me kind of on board for that next phase, that execution phase, then I can help be that liaison between. And I find things just like go really smoothly and we get what we want. Sometimes because the client doesn't always have the proper expectations, no matter how much you try to communicate to them. Sometimes they think like, it'll be fine. We've got the plans. The contractor is going to follow them. I don't need to do that much. And sometimes they'll call me and be like, OMG, we need your help. Like, no matter how great the contractor is, it is really difficult if you were not inside each design decision along the way to creating the plan. It's difficult to want to necessarily follow it or to see everything that is right there in front of you on paper, right? So it is super helpful to have kind of a product manager and a project manager to help with a contractor. So making sure those little details don't get missed. And if the client doesn't like something that's going on the job site, I can always be that person. I'm happy to be the bad guy and say, hey, we didn't like the way that this turned out over here. Or, you know, ideally, I don't have to do that because I'm there doing these walkthroughs before the work gets performed and they understand exactly what we want, and then mistakes don't happen. So
makes total sense. And in regards to mistakes, what would you say the biggest mistakes are that your clients make that cost them time, emotional energy, money? You know, what's most common?
That's a really good question. I would say, well, number one, just not being ready to like order everything when we need to order everything, right? So like sometimes it's just about like the flow of the project, right? Trying to continue to design after we've buttoned up the design. Those are things where, you know, sometimes I have to
the
like
change order on the change order.
Okay, I am disconnecting your Pinterest account and you cannot look at any other ideas. So some people like to really like keep it going, or they just continue to add on. But I would say really like the biggest issue that I see is not having the clear scope of work, which is like really part of what I do for the clients and the contractor. And that can be bad on both sides, right? So let's say we're getting into a project and they have a contractor that they've received a bid for the work. And maybe the contractor has, you know, bid the job prior to reviewing my plans, or they've pulled me in afterwards and they've got that. So I always try to say, hey, let's make sure the contractor is really bidding off of these details and not bidding kind of according to what their normal is, because then what happens is the contractor doesn't have an accurate bid. The client doesn't know the contractor doesn't have an accurate bid. And then if they don't share that bid with me for me to review and cross-check, then I can't catch those errors. And then we get into the project and maybe there's things missing. And then the contractor says, oh, well, that's going to be a scope change. That's an additional cost. It's going to be XYZ. The homeowner still really wants those things, but they're not happy because they didn't know that that wasn't included in the bid, right? And then the contractor feels bad, or maybe he's not even charging what he should be charging for that because he feels guilt. So then he's kind of not feeling great about it either. So like those are things, I would say those are like the biggest issues that I find on projects, is not being fully aligned on, you know, the scope of work and the contractor budget. So I try to, as often as I can, get in there. And sometimes just based off the type of job it is and people want to keep things separate, or they don't want to pay me to do that, I'm like, I can help you. Like, please take my help, you know? And sometimes that gets missed and it causes an issue. So.
Well, and I mean, I think you just summed up all life, business, and relationships. It's lack of clear communication, you know, misunderstandings by both parties, and then people's feelings and or emotions or pocketbooks getting hurt. I mean, that's clearly sums it up. We see that actually all the time too. I think that's just like a really big function of real estate in general. Is people's expectations and their emotions pull them in a certain direction, but they have not, you know, clearly articulated that. And there's a massive difference between something that is, you know, the builder grade bid and something that starts to even get mildly custom or requires extra steps.
Yeah, exactly. And there's a lot of detail in that. I mean, you know, working for you or another investor on like a more kind of spec level project, you know, the trades are used to working that way, and that's their autopilot. And I understand why they are like that. But then when you use a trade, that typically works in more production, or they work on more spec level projects, and you pull that person over and you're asking them to install and do work on something more custom, their autopilot kicks in. And unless the contractor thinks ahead to make sure to really specifically call out things that are on the plans. I mean, they're on the plans, but there's a lot of assumptions that still get made, right? So that's kind of what I try to do, is have these checkpoints, right? So it's we have a walkthrough when we start the project with the contractor, with the electrician, with the plumber. I call out anything that is outside of their normal, right? So I'm saying, hey, awesome. Did you notice on the cabinet plan, we did drawers as a sink bases instead of a double door, right? So the P-trap has to be maybe raised up a little bit. It's got to be tight. It's got to be perfectly on center, because we cut out these little U channels in the drawer boxes to fit that P-trap through. If it's not called out, even if it's on the plan, they might miss it. And then they just put that P-trap kind of willy-nilly anywhere in the middle of that box, and they got to move it, right? So that's a small example of kind of, how we try to get ahead of those things. And which is why I just like to be in on those details, and just have those checkpoints to make sure if we've got a 20-minute walkthrough at the beginning of the project with each trade, then I don't get the call from the contractor saying, oh gosh, we didn't realize, we missed this detail, and now what are we going to do? And then I am there trying to come up with a creative solution. Is it cheaper for us to change the cabinet, give the clients a design that they didn't want, or who's going to move the plumbing or whatever it may be? And then we're trying to figure out, okay, what's our priorities again? What are we going to do to fix this problem now? Right. So there's that problem solving thing that snowballs into.
Absolutely. James and I were walking through last week, and I was like, okay, is there anything we need in these islands? Because islands always seem to get something missed in them, if it's plumbing or electrical, what about this over here? And I just walk around like Columbo and try to ask questions like I don't know anything. Hey, what about this? What are we thinking about this? Exactly. And that casual conversation unearths a lot of, oh, we need to move this. We got to do this. Hey, look right here. You can see I cut open the concrete to run that over there. What happens when a client has a really strong opinion about something, or they're like, I really want to have it this way, but it may not be functional, or it's going to be extremely expensive? What's that conversation look like, to them, to let them down gently, or not to, destroy their dream all at the same time?
Right. Yeah. I mean, I'm pretty blunt. Honesty is the best policy. But I try to offer a solution, right? So if I think something that they want is just kind of ridiculous, I try to explain as politely as possible without offending their, personal style or whatever, why we may have issues with it, right? So, hey, let's talk about the pros and cons of this thing that you want to do. So pros, you love it. Cons, we're going to run into, these issues over here. And for that reason, we might want to shift gears on that and maybe do this other thing instead, right? Always come with a solution and an alternative, which is helpful. Always providing a few options, and then they can weigh those options and usually come to the right conclusion, Oh,
I love it. What happens when you're working through a project and then you're just stuck or creatively drained? You're like, okay, now how do you reset? How do you recalibrate?
I don't get creatively drained.
Really?
Not typically.
I love it.
I want more. I'd like more creativity and less busy work. If you
Yeah.
could take the estimates and invoices off of my plate and give me more creative stuff, that would be great. Yeah, I mean, I think I don't have a lot of blocks with that. I think communication and collaboration is always the thing, right? And there's plenty of inspiration out there in the world. You know, you can always pop on to the internet and look at pictures and dig into, you know, other ideas. I don't like to sit in that too much though, because honestly, the thing I like about design so much is that kind of flow creativity that I get in. Like that's something that's part of why I love doing it. Sometimes I will come up with an idea and then I might go to try to find a picture of something that looks like the idea that I've visualized in my mind. So that's usually more how that process looks versus me like aimlessly searching about and then being like, ooh, I like that. I like that. It's more like I've got a thought. I've got an idea. How can I quickly like sketch this out? And then how can I find maybe a reference of something that looks kind of similar to that so I can like see it. But that's kind of, you know, I'm a creative person. So that's like one of my skills is being able to see things that other people can't see, right?
No, because I mean, and once again, here's just, you know, different brains. My brain is like, man, that'd just be exhausting.
Yeah. No, the creativity it just keeps coming.
That's awesome. And then, so speaking of creativity or like visualizing something that, you know, pops into your head, are you using, you know, AI at all to, you know, type something out as a prompt to go look for that or generate an image? You know, what are you doing there? Because, you know, that seems to be changing everything right now.
Yeah, I knew you would ask me this question. You know, AI is obviously taking off. I'm not personally using AI at this moment, and I'm sure that will change in the coming years. Probably in the next year, I've got some ideas of how I could start using it. You know, a lot of people are like, oh, AI is going to take over, you know, the designer's job. And I really, no, it's just not possible, unfortunately. But I do see AI kind of replacing more of like that Pinterest inspiration, right? So like I said, if I had an idea and I didn't want to take time to like fully put it in a rendering, if I just want to say like, hey, gosh, I wonder what it would look like. I want to see a kitchen with, you know, green cabinets and white backsplash and, you know, a walnut island, whatever. Like I could have AI generate a concept that looks like that. But really that's just like looking at Pinterest and searching for kitchen with green cabinets and a walnut island, right? So we're just looking at an inspiration image in that regard. And in some sense, like it's better to look at a real kitchen that looks like that because an AI generated image is still not quite as realistic.
Oh yeah, because it doesn't have the same level of color and texture.
Exactly. Yeah. So for me, like it's not really a tool that I use, and it would be more like for a client facing example, right? Because I'm already creating a color rendering as part of their plans, and that's kind of all built into my design process. So it would be more just like in that beginning stage of inspiration. And again, like I think the real images are better as inspiration photos. So yeah, I haven't really quite thought, I don't need it quite yet. And it's just not good enough yet
I agree. And
me.
I think also what people are currently overestimating is it's just a tool. It's like another hammer. If you don't know how to swing the hammer, you can't really do anything, number one. And then number two, AI doesn't have taste. So it doesn't have taste. It can't see things in a certain way. And that is part of that creativity and that design. And then number three, this is what's also interesting about just as the digital age explodes even more is this idea that human interaction like this
Hmm.
is going to become more important, and the
Right.
ability to communicate and chat with people and deal with their emotions even more important, not less important. So you literally, yes, it may help with some of the design process someday, just like, it helps with parts of real estate and things like that. But when things are high emotion,
Right.
that human buffer is so needed. It doesn't work
Yeah.
without the humans.
And honestly, like, especially for a homeowner facing job for me, investors, contractors, they're more like, here's a budget, make
Yeah.
it pretty, call me when it's done.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's
Yeah.
different
We
mentality.
send some text messages and some emails.
Exactly. We're like, hey, how's it going? You still working? Yep. Okay, we're good. Bye. Homeowners is more like, we've got regular scheduled check-ins and Zooms, and they really have a lot of opinions about likes and dislikes. And you might
Yeah.
be dealing with the husband and the wife, and they've got two totally different styles. And I'm acting as a marriage counselor through the entire process and mediator, right? So, and there's a lot that goes into that that's going to form the design, right? Because if he likes this and she likes that, and like I said before, sometimes we're really trying to marry two different styles together, and we're creating these compromises that are human compromises that an AI generated image just really cannot get the nuance of what that looks like and feels like. And so again, it's really just like broad concept inspiration when we get down to the nitty gritty of it and the material selections. It's like, okay, that's pretty, but like, what is that? Where did you buy those cabinets? What is that specific style? What is the specific paint color? What is the specific tile and the countertop? And where are we purchasing them from? And who's fabricating them? There's just like so many more details into it that I don't think AI is going to touch for quite a while.
Oh, I love it. What's a design trend that you're like, I want this thing to die and disappear?
Oh gosh. Word art, please.
Oh,
That's it for me. It just kills me. Just the big signs in the kitchen and in the dining room, the family or whatever it is. I'm not a big fan of word art.
Death to word art. I love it. I
Yes,
love it.
please.
What what should homeowners or builders or investors, know before hiring a interior designer? What should they be looking for? What should they know?
It's all about finding a match.
Mm.
And especially if you're working on a long project, some of the clients that I work with, we may be working together for 2 or 3 years. If
Oh
they're
yeah.
coming to me before they've submitted for permits, and then, maybe there's issues with the permit, or maybe they have budget issues and we put a pause on it, and then we're kind of back together, and then we do some more of that, and then the contractor's booked out. So then they might wait even. We could be hanging out for a long time. So I think having a personality match is really important. And really establishing trust, because if there's any question, and honestly, I've had clients where I knew that they hadn't bought fully into me and in their trust in me, right? I just know, like, you're not 100% with me. There's something in the back of your mind that's, maybe it's a power struggle or whatever it may be, that they weren't fully ready to like openly collaborate. And I've had to say, I'm sorry, great project, I wish you well, I don't think we're a good fit, because I know if you don't have that solid foundation right from the get-go, and it will build and get better, of course, over time. But if there's anything that just feels a little bit off, it's going to go south.
Makes total sense.
Yeah.
Total sense. What when you're not designing, what do you do for creative joy or to relax or fun?
I paint. So more art. I do more art. A lot of Well, I wish I had more time to do it, but yeah, I do like watercolor painting and sketching and all of that. So that's my creative outlet when I'm taking a break from my creative job. And I have a garden, so I'm obsessed with my vegetables.
Oh, I love it.
I'm out in the backyard talking to my vegetable babies and telling them that they're doing a great job and, tending to that. And like every 40 something, I've got a sourdough starter. His name's Fred. So basically, I'm doing all the granny hobbies and I love it.
No, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Where can people find you, your business? How do they get a hold of you?
They can go to my website, formandfunctionstyle.com, and I've got a contact form on there, or they can look at my Instagram or my Facebook, which is Form and Function Style.
Okay, awesome. Talia, thank you for hanging out with us today.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it. Always good to chat with you.